My name's Ed Winters. I go by the social media name Earthling Ed, and I am a vegan educator, activist, and I guess public speaker as well. So I went vegan 4 years ago now, and I've been vegetarian for about 8 9 months, and then I saw the documentary Earthlings, and after that I realized just the scope of what we do to animals and how it's bigger than just food. It's, you know, or just meat. It's, you know, it's dairy and eggs, it's clothes, it's cosmetics, it's circuses and zoos and aquariums, and just the whole scope of it really was reinforced to me. And so after that, I had no choice but to go vegan, because I realized if I didn't, I'd be living in a state of hypocrisy where I was saying, oh, this is terrible, but I was part of that system and I was paying for it to happen, even though I was saying it's really bad. So 4 years ago, because I just saw a documentary that opened my eyes and felt like a hypocrite, and there was no way that I couldn't after that. The best part of being vegan, I guess, is knowing that you're part of something that's bringing about positive change, and knowing that in the future the difficulties of now will become worthwhile, in the sense of, you know, it's not always easy for us. You know, we live in a society that is very much heavy on animal cruelty and animal abuse, and so that comes with its challenges. You know, we see footage all the time of horrible things happening. We're aware of all these terrible things. We hear people in the media or on the streets saying horrible things and condoning violence towards animals. So I think the best thing is knowing that in time we will look back and be grateful that we made the change when we did, and being grateful for the fact that we know that we're saving animals now. So I think it's a mixture of knowing that we're having a direct impact on the lives of others who need us to, but also knowing that in the future people will look back and say you did the right thing, and we'll get, I guess, a sense of validation for the hard work we're doing now. There's a few things that bug me that I never thought of. Before I was vegan, right, I had like a couple of excuses for not being vegan. You know, taste, extremeness, whatever. But I'd never ever comprehended things about like plants feeling pain. I'd never comprehended like, oh, animals will overpopulate us and they'll just run wild. So I think out of all the kind of questions and excuses I get given, the plants one really annoys me, and also the one about animals like just being released. Like, we're just going to open up the farm doors and let them run around everywhere. Like, I think the problem is people don't think these things through properly enough, and the answers to so many of these questions and excuses are so blatantly obvious, but people just never take a moment to actually think about it. And I think what happens is when people have a conversation with a vegan, often it's kind of the first time they've ever done it, so it might be a cube, and a vegan will come over to them and just start asking them questions, and they're just thinking on the spot, so they don't have that time to self-reflect, and so they're just saying anything they can think of. Oh, plants feel pain. It's like, that's outrageous, you know. Oh, animals can overpopulate us. And what's another one? Oh, like, you know, the animals die in crop production. So I think one of those ones, probably.
One of those.
One of the many. Oh, I guess you won't take antibiotics because it kills bacteria. I was like, how do you even get to that conclusion? Like, it's just madness. Going vegan definitely changes your perceptions on life. I think, first and foremost, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? First and foremost, it makes you realize how dark and horrible people can be. And I think before I was vegan, I had this impression, it's a very simple impression, that you've kind of got good people and you've got bad people, right? And bad people are the people that kind of like create wars, or, you know, murderers or arsonists. And then you've kind of got the rest of society, which is predominantly good people that don't do these things and everything's fine. But then you go vegan and you realize that all those good people are doing the same things as all the bad people are doing, in the sense of they're causing violence and they're harming others and they're thinking about themselves and not thinking about the bigger picture. And so I think it kind of opens your eyes to just this really horrible underbelly that exists within every section of society, and you can't categorize people like you want to, and it's just this overwhelming sense of just despair and hopelessness. But then the other side of that story is you become, say, an activist. and you immerse yourself in a community, and then you actually realize that humans aren't that bad, you know. And I think what happens often is when you first go vegan, you have this impression it's like humans are horrible, humans are these evil people, we should be just obliterated from the planet, we don't deserve to live here. But then for me, the longer I've been vegan and the more I've immersed myself in the community and spent time just talking to non-vegans as well, that you realize that there's a whole system in place and that people aren't consciously aware of what they're doing, and because they're not necessarily aware, you can't hold them entirely morally responsible. And so I think there's that beginning bit where it's really evil and really horrible and really sinister, but for me now I'm starting to understand that actually there's a lot of goodness in this world, and as humans we can achieve so much. We just have to change our mindsets and our mentality, and we're so intelligent, like we really are incredibly intelligent, and if we use that intelligence to generate something positive, imagine if we came together, we could solve every problem in this world collectively if we just sat down and spoke to each other. So for me, I think there's been this gradual shift from going vegan, feeling really, I guess, depressed, really upset about things, but now coming to the point where I'm starting to believe that actually, even though there's terrible things still happening, I see a future that is quite prosperous as well. So it changes everything, you know, everything. It makes you more aware of the nature of other animals, of wildlife, of just how your life has an impact just greater than you believe it does. Everything. I don't know. I see veganism as like a stepping stone to living in a more conscious way. And it's like that first step on a really long journey that we're all still on, without a definitive end point in sight. I do. I believe that the future is going to be predominantly vegan. So what I mean by that is I believe that we can end farming, we can end animal testing, we can end animal use for clothing. Basically we can obliterate maybe 98-99% of animal use. But I always think that there's going to be sections of the world that are still going to hunt. There'll be sections of the world that maybe still use animals in some sense. So I think in the Western world, places like Denmark, the UK, where I live, I think absolutely 100% we can obliterate nearly all animal exploitation. Whether we'll have like an entirely vegan world is maybe debatable, but I think we can get to a point where it becomes such a taboo that those that harm animals are prosecuted criminally, or at least are very much frowned upon and punished within society as well. So I think the answer to that is yes. This is the problem, right? So for me, a vegan world is bigger than just not harming animals. It's living in kind of a harmonious, symbiotic kind of relationship where we treat each other with respect, we treat animals, non-human animals with respect, we treat our environment with respect. So it's not just as easy as saying we no longer exploit animals. It's a far greater philosophy than that. And I think that mentality within humans is going to be really hard to create, because it's almost like that pursuit of perfection. I think like veganism in itself is a pursuit of perfection, and perfection doesn't exist and will always be inherently flawed. So I don't think we'll ever have an entirely vegan world in the way that I want it, but I think we'll have a vegan world in a way that creates a much more sustainable, harmonious and pleasant life for everyone. It's a difficult one though, isn't it? I think one thing I'd like to add is we see kind of pockets of veganism really growing in specific countries. So Denmark's a good example. So there's definitely a vegan movement growing here, and in the past 4 or 5 years it's really started to grow, and in the next 5 years it's going to continue to grow. And in England, it's really, and in the United Kingdom, it's pushing on so fast now. Like I'm really, like it's like a roller coaster. I feel like we're just kind of like just strapped in, about to shoot off. But I think what's really inspiring is to see other areas of the world where you think that it's not going to be going so well. So let's look at maybe areas in the Middle East. Let's look at China, perhaps, or even India. You know, places where there's kind of like a booming industrial agriculture at the moment. You know, factory farming is still relatively new compared to European countries. I think what's really inspiring is that there's still these pockets of veganism emerging there. And we look at China as kind of this example of everything really terrible that's happening to animals. And sometimes when I talk to people about the rise in veganism, they say, but you know, in China, meat consumption's rising, and in other areas of the world it's rising. And that's true, but there is also that vegan population rising as well. And I think we have to not be so disheartened by the statistics and understand that this is all like this windy road that we're on. And I think sometimes we expect it to be like this straightforward path where we just keep marching down and everything's going to go swimmingly, and it's not going to do that. We're going to take bumps and curves, and sometimes things are going to look like we're going backwards. But the progress is being made even in places where it appears that it's not. Sometimes it can be hard to see through all the horrible things that are happening. There is something really wonderful happening all over the world. It's not just isolated in specific countries, it's a global movement. And I think our responsibility is to foster that and, you know, stick to our communities, but also look broader and see how we can reach out to help others and do what we can. I think the more that we unite and the more that we kind of work together under this umbrella of unification, that's how we can push on a lot quicker. So I think my message is just be positive. Don't become overly optimistic, and remind yourself of why you're doing what you do, but be positive, work together, and what we want can happen. That's what I'd say.